My name is Abigail, and this is the story of how I happily lived with my husband in his parents' house. We were a small, tight-knit family, but our circumstances were far from ideal. My husband's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, received a modest pension, which barely covered their basic needs. As for my husband, Jack, he had been unable to find steady work for quite some time. It was up to me to bear the weight of our financial responsibilities. I worked tirelessly, taking on multiple jobs to ensure that we had enough to get by. I woke up before the crack of dawn, trudging through the day with unwavering determination. My days were filled with endless tasks and deadlines, but I pushed forward, motivated by the love I had for my family. Each evening, I returned home to find Jack and his parents waiting for me. Mr. Anderson would be seated in his favorite armchair, engrossed in the evening news, while Mrs. Anderson would be in the kitchen, preparing a simple yet heartfelt meal. Jack, on the other hand, would greet me with a tired smile, his dreams of finding employment fading with each passing day. Despite the challenges we faced, I embraced my role wholeheartedly. I managed the household finances, paying the bills and making sure there was food on the table. I took care of all the errands, ensuring that everyone had what they needed. I was the pillar upon which our little family relied, the glue that held us together. Our days were filled with a delicate balance of routines and compromises. I made sacrifices, putting aside my own dreams and desires to support my husband and his parents. I yearned for stability and security, but I understood that our situation demanded sacrifices from all of us. There were nights when exhaustion weighed heavily upon me, my body and mind craving respite. But as I looked at my husband still searching for employment and his parents struggling to make ends meet, I found the strength to carry on. Their well-being became my sole purpose, and I poured every ounce of my being into ensuring their comfort and happiness. The love I had for them never wavered, even as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into years. I nurtured hope within me, believing that our circumstances would improve, that our sacrifices would bear fruit. Little did I know that our world was about to be shattered, and the foundation of trust I had built would crumble before my eyes. One fateful day, while the weight of my responsibilities still rested heavily on my shoulders, an ominous cloud loomed over our seemingly contented household. The absence of Jack's parents, who had decided to embark on an extended vacation, left us alone in the house. Unbeknownst to me, this solitude would expose a heartbreaking betrayal. As usual, I embarked on my daily routine, dedicating myself to my work with unwavering commitment. The hours dragged on, and my anticipation grew as I made my way back home, eager to find solace within the walls of our shared abode. Upon pushing open the bedroom door, a strange cacophony of sounds greeted my ears, instantly putting me on edge. Laughter, low whispers, and inexplicable sighs filled the room, creating an unsettling atmosphere that sent chills down my spine. Dread washed over me, forewarning of the heart-wrenching discovery that awaited me within those four walls. Summoning all my courage, I stepped further into the room, my eyes frantically scanning the scene before me. And there it was, a scene that shattered my world and tore at the fabric of my trust. There, lying in our bed entangled with another woman, was my husband, Jack. Anguish surged within me, battling against the shock and disbelief that threatened to consume my very being. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest, unable to comprehend the extent of the betrayal unfolding before my eyes. Finally finding my voice, I summoned the strength to confront Jack, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartache. "How could you do this to me?" I asked, my words laced with pain. "After everything we've been through, the sacrifices I've made for you and your parents?" Jack's face contorted with anger, a defensive rage burning in his eyes. He lashed out, his voice dripping with resentment. "Get out of here!" he yelled, his words cutting through the air like a sharp knife. Tears welled up in my eyes as I gazed at him, feeling the shards of our shattered relationship piercing my soul. The love I had once held for him felt replaced by a raw, seething anger. With every ounce of strength left in me, I managed to choke out a response. "All right, if that's what you want." And so, with a heavy heart and tears streaming down my face, I left the room that had been our sanctuary, our shared space, now tainted by betrayal. I closed the door behind me, shutting out the remnants of a life that was now irretrievably shattered. In the wake of the devastating confrontation with my husband and his parents, I found myself desperately seeking solace and support. Their betrayal had shattered my world, leaving me emotionally wounded and craving understanding. With a heavy heart, I reached out to those I believed could offer me comfort, the very people who were supposed to be my in-laws. Determined to express the pain that consumed me, I dialed the familiar number of Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. As the phone rang, my mind raced with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Perhaps, I thought, they would see the error of their ways, recognize the pain they had caused, and extend a sympathetic ear. Finally, the call connected, and Mr. Anderson's voice greeted me. "Hello," he said, his tone guarded. Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled to compose myself. "It's Abigail," I managed to say, my voice quivering. "I need to talk to you. Something terrible has happened." There was a momentary pause on the other end of the line, as if Mr. Anderson was contemplating his response. Finally, he spoke, his words laced with cold indifference. "We're not interested in hearing your drama, Abigail. We're not interested in hearing your drama, Abigail." The words hung in the air, a painful rejection that echoed in my ears. The weight their rejection was like a second betrayal, exacerbating the wounds already inflicted upon my heart. Their callous dismissal left me feeling utterly alone, abandoned by the very people I had once considered family. Tears streamed down my face as I realized that I had been holding on to a flicker of hope, hoping for a glimmer of remorse or understanding. But their response revealed their true colors, the depth of their disdain for me. In that moment, I resolved to forge my own path, to seek justice and redemption on my own terms. Determined to take control of my life and find the support I so desperately needed, I turned to a few close friends who had always stood by me. Their unwavering loyalty and understanding became my refuge in the storm of chaos that had enveloped me. Through their comforting presence and empathetic ears, I found strength to carry on. They reminded me of my worth, of the resilience that resided within me. They assured me that I was not defined by the betrayal inflicted upon me, and that I deserved happiness and justice. With their encouragement, I began to chart a new course. I sought legal advice, determined to protect my rights and ensure that justice would be served. I was no longer the submissive, self-sacrificing woman they had known. I had found my voice, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. As I distanced myself from the toxic influences of my husband and his parents, I realized that I had found a newfound strength within myself. Their rejection had propelled me forward, ignited a fire that burned fiercely within my soul. It was a turning point, the moment I embraced my own worth and refused to be defined by their cruelty. And so, armed with the support of true friends and the determination to reclaim my life, I set forth on a path of self-discovery and justice, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Embracing the newfound strength within me, fueled by the pain and betrayal inflicted by my husband and his parents, I made a solemn vow. No longer would I be a victim of their callousness. It was time to take matters into my own hands and seek revenge for the anguish they had caused. With a steely resolve, I planned my course of action meticulously. I knew that hitting them where it hurt the most, their material possessions, would serve as a powerful blow. The very things I had provided for our lives would become the weapons of retribution. First, I turned my attention to the car I had gifted my husband on his birthday. It had been a gesture of love, an expression of my unwavering support, but now it symbolized the broken trust and shattered dreams that lay between us. Confronting my husband, I asserted my rights. "You no longer deserve this car," I declared, my voice firm and resolute. "It was a gift from me, and it's time for me to take it back." He pleaded with me, claiming that he had no money and couldn't survive without the car. But I stood my ground, unwavering in my determination. "You have brought this upon yourself," I stated, my voice laced with a mix of disappointment and anger. "You must face the consequences of your actions." With the car now in my possession, I proceeded to the next phase of my plan. Every item I had purchased for our shared home would be removed, leaving them with a hollow shell, a stark reminder of the life they had so callously discarded. Methodically, I packed up every piece of furniture, every decoration, and every appliance. Each item I removed was a symbolic act, severing the ties that had bound us together. Their cries of protest fell on deaf ears as I carried out my mission, fueled by a sense of justified vengeance. When the house stood bare, devoid of the life we had once shared, I knew the impact of my actions would reverberate within their souls. They would be left with nothing, just as they had left me emotionally shattered and discarded. Predictably, my husband and his parents took me to court, desperate to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. But I was armed with evidence, a record of every purchase, every transaction, proving that I alone had financed our lives. The court recognized my rightful ownership and ruled in my favor. As the gavel fell, a triumphant smile played upon my lips. The court not only denied their claims but also ordered them to compensate me for the emotional distress and financial burdens they had inflicted upon me. Justice was finally served, and I reveled in the satisfaction of seeing them face the consequences of their actions. I had exacted my revenge, not out of a vindictive desire, but as a means of restoring my own dignity and reclaiming my power. Their betrayal had awakened a resilience within me, and I emerged from the battle stronger than ever before. With the courts ruling in my favor, I had the means to forge a new path, free from their toxic influence. The money awarded to me would provide the foundation for a fresh start, a chance to rebuild a life that was now solely mine to shape. In the end, it was not just revenge I sought. It was the reclamation of my own worth. Their actions had tried to diminish me, but I had risen above their cruelty, emerging as a force to be reckoned with. The victory was not just in the material triumph, but in the restoration of my own self-belief and the strength to move forward, leaving them to reckon with the consequences of their choices. Armed with the court's ruling and the satisfaction of knowing justice had been served, I embarked on the final phase of my revenge, determined to deliver the ultimate blow to my unfaithful husband and his callous parents. It was time to strip them of everything, leaving them with the consequences of their actions. With a resolute spirit, I returned to their house, now an empty shell devoid of the life we had once shared. They stood there, a mixture of anger and disbelief etched on their faces as I approached. My husband's voice trembled with desperation as he pleaded, "Abigail, please don't do this! We have nothing left!" A bitter smile tugged at the corners of my lips as I replied, my tone icy just as I had nothing when you betrayed me. Without hesitation, I began dismantling their illusion of stability. I packed up every trace of my presence in their lives, every possession I had acquired through my hard work and sacrifice. Piece by piece, I stripped the house bare, leaving only emptiness in my wake. As I loaded the belongings into my car, my husband's parents watched, their faces contorted with anger and resentment. Mrs. Anderson's voice dripped with bitterness as she shouted, "You're nothing but a vindictive woman! Abigail, you'll regret this." I met her gaze with a steely resolve. "Regret? No. This is justice. You all brought this upon yourselves," I retorted, my voice filled with a mixture of pain and triumph. When the house stood barren and bereft, a stark reflection of the void they had created in my life, I knew the final blow had been delivered. They had been left with almost nothing, just as they had left me emotionally shattered and discarded. As I drove away, the weight of their betrayal began to lift from my shoulders. The vengeance I had sought was not born out of malice, but out of a deep need for closure and the restoration of my own worth. Their actions had sought to diminish me, but I had risen above their cruelty, reclaiming my power and independence. In the aftermath, news of their defeat spread, echoing through our community like a cautionary tale. The whispers and gossip were a small vindication, a reminder that the truth had prevailed and the consequences of their actions were now on full display for all to see. Yet, as I reflected on my revenge, I realized that it was not just about punishing them, it was about reclaiming my life. With the money awarded to me, I had the means to forge a new path, to build a future free from their toxic influence. Their actions had tried to break me, but instead, they had ignited a fire within me, propelling me toward a life of strength and resilience. The final blow I had delivered was not just in the material loss they had suffered, but in the transformation it had sparked within me. I had shed the role of the sacrificial wife, no longer defined by their cruelty. I emerged from the battle stronger, with a renewed sense of self-belief, ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. And so, as I drove away from their house, Leaving them to reckon with the consequences of their choices, I found solace in the knowledge that I had reclaimed my life and turned the tables on those who had sought to destroy me. The final blow had been delivered, but it was not just a moment of revenge. It was the beginning of my liberation. As the dust settled from the chaos I had unleashed, I found solace in the fact that justice had been served. The court's ruling had not only validated my claims, but had also brought forth a sense of vindication and closure. It was time for my husband and his parents to face the consequences of their actions. With the court's decision in my favor, a renewed sense of confidence and empowerment coursed through my veins. It was a testament to the strength and resilience I had discovered within myself throughout this tumultuous journey. I no longer felt like a victim. I emerged as the victor in this battle for justice. The courtroom scene played out with charged emotions and fervent arguments. My husband's parents, still harboring resentment and entitlement, fought tooth and nail to reclaim what they believed was theirs. Their voices reverberated in the courtroom, pleading their case with desperation. "The items taken from the house were ours!" Mr. Anderson exclaimed, his voice filled with frustration. "He had no right to strip us of everything we owned." The courtroom, however, saw through their claims. My legal team meticulously presented the evidence of my financial contributions, the records of my hard work and sacrifice. The judge recognized the truth. Those possessions were rightfully mine, bought with my own sweat and tears. The judge's gavel struck, resonating through the room as the verdict was announced. "The court finds in favor of Abigail," the judge declared, their voice firm and impartial. The items removed from the house rightfully belonged to her, as they were purchased with her own funds. A sense of triumph surged through me, as if the weight of their betrayal had finally been lifted from my shoulders. Their attempts to undermine and diminish me had been thwarted by the very system they had sought to exploit. Justice had prevailed, and I was the victor. But justice did not stop there. The judge, recognizing the emotional distress and financial burdens I had endured, handed down a significant judgment in my favor. My husband and his parents would now have to pay a substantial sum of money as compensation for the pain they had inflicted upon me. As the courtroom erupted in whispers and murmurs, my husband and his parents stood there, faces drained of color. The reality of their actions and the consequences that awaited them had finally sunk in. The tables had turned, and they were now the ones who would bear the burden of their choices. "You did this to yourselves," I said, meeting their gaze with unwavering resolve. "You brought this upon yourselves with your betrayal and cruelty." Their expressions wavered between anger and defeat, their words swallowed by the weight of their defeat. The realization of the magnitude of their actions had finally dawned upon them. Leaving the courtroom, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter of my life that was marred by their deceit had come to an end. I had triumphed over their attempts to break me, rising above the pain and emerging stronger than ever. With the compensation awarded to me, I had the means to build a new life, one free from the toxicity of their presence. I was no longer bound by their betrayal. I was now empowered to shape my own destiny, to find happiness on my own terms. As I walked away from the courthouse, I embraced the victory and the liberation it brought. Justice had been served, not just in the form of material recompense, but in the restoration of my dignity and self-worth. The scars remained, but they were badges of strength, reminders of the resilience that had carried me through the darkest of times. And so, with my head held high and a heart filled with newfound hope, I stepped into the future, ready to embrace the possibilities that awaited me. Justice had been served, and I was ready to reclaim my life with a renewed sense of purpose and a profound belief in my own worth.